Next up is Rabbi Marc Wilson. Rabbi Marc Wilson is an essayist, a community activist, a commentator for many magazines, articles, papers. He's an intellect and a writer. Rabbi Marc is here tonight to share his, quote, gift of gab, as he calls it, about, and these are his words, the loopy roller coaster of bipolarity. Welcome, Rabbi Marc.
My inability to get out of my seat is one of the few things in my life that is not a function of my bipolarity. You want to hear the rest of the story? If you have an hour or two, I'll tell you. But I do want to tell you this. It's a prayer for anyone who has ever beheld a pastor of any faith seeming to have a screw loose. For this one, I would say to you, please spare me the bromides of, well, clergy are people too, or spare me of saying being a rabbi would make anyone crazy. Sometimes I wonder if serving an upper middle class Jewish congregation is any easier or any worse than serving some in the central city. This rabbi nearly committed suicide, emotionally abused his wife, berated his congregants in his sermons, sent ugly and grandiose emails, left his congregation in shambles, and departed from the pulpit and his spiritual calling in disgrace. The progression took decades, then sped up to the point of near fatality. It began in increasingly protracted periods of depression, the periods of elation that counterpointed them felt like respites in normalcy. Talk therapy did not help. Patience of family did not help. Turning to God did not help. Antidepressants helped for a while, but then they also lost their efficacy. My mood swings became so radical, so detached from reality, that I became harmful to myself and to my beloved wife, Linda, who's here with me this evening. The fact that she's here with me at all is not something for which I can take credit. Only she and God could take credit for that. Peaks and valleys oscillated higher and lower and cycled so quickly that my personality vacillated without a moment's notice. Roller coaster up, roller coaster down. Was I aware that any of this was going on? Not at first. Oh no, but I was so sick. Outbursts directed even toward a loving wife were full of language the likes of which I had never uttered before and pray I'll never utter again. She would say sometimes, and I'd hear her on the phone, he's starting to swear a lot again. We must be going into one of those periods. Every day was riddled with suicidal thoughts, and even the birth of my grandchildren could not assuage. After all, you know, they would be better off never knowing someone who was so miserable. Tomorrow evening I celebrate the bar mitzvah of my eldest grandson. All this was punctuated by grandiosity and obsessiveness. God of Booga Booga came at me with this voracious monster that was called eBay. I created a fantasy, you'll love this, of collecting cufflinks. My psychiatrist said that he had heard of baseball caps before, but never cufflinks. And over a period of several months, I spent hundreds of dollars that Linda had earned amassing collections of cufflinks, disregarding that at that point, I owned nary a French cuff shirt. Now, this was also precisely the same time that the relationship with my congregation spun out of control. Oh, there was elation, there was depression, there was anger, there was unrealistic expectations, there were vituperate outbursts in meetings. Everyone remember who Mayor Max Heller was? He was a leader of my congregation, and things got so bad that there was a point in a meeting at which he was trying to help me that I yelled out, "Shut up, Max, you're a liar," to Mayor Max Heller. I was, now that 14 years have passed, still unemployed as a rabbi. The synagogue world is small. The news gets out. Who would hire a rabbi with such a loose cannon, even from the pulpit? Finally, depression, interrupted by grandiosity, pushed me to a rash decision to resign, because I knew I could call in the next week and find someone who would pay me $100,000 just to offer my strong wit and personality. It was a decision accompanied by aplomb, I have to look that word up, and flamboyance, a word that I've often heard. I was beloved to my congregation. The only fault that I attributed to that well-heeled bunch of upper middle class congregation was in its leadership that did not say to Linda in my fantasy, "Your husband is a sick man. Take the time, get him help, we'll wait." Instead, the delegation inferred to Linda, "We need him pronto. We have important events coming up. We can't afford to lose him. Now you tell him to get him back on the horse and ride." It's an interesting commentary on what people in general know and don't know about bipolarity. Finally, Linda gave me an ultimatum. It was an ultimatum for me to get help, or this is a careful weaving of words now, or to do whatever it took to protect herself. And that pushed me into the right psychiatrist's arms. I owe him my life. Here was someone who understood, for me, the neurochemical basis of bipolarity. Antidepressants would not solve the problem. The addition of anti-seizure medicines now seem to have been working remarkably well. I don't know exactly the formulation, but I want people to have trust and faith in something. And so it was with me. The angry outbursts have ceased. The morbid thoughts are gone. I have deleted eBay from my favorite places. And I've actually lost 70 pounds, although I have to admit I've gained 40 back. That's what I hold myself like this because I can't button my jacket. The medication certainly enables me to manage life's typical highs, lows, and even disappointments without any self-destructive tailspins. Am I scared? You bet I'm scared. How much I would like to believe that having bipolarity is simply a state of mind. I fear that one day the meds will lose their efficacy. And at the tender age of 66, I fear that my father's descent into Alzheimer's at his age of 70 bodes ominous for me. I also fear that my grandfather's radical mood swings, get this? Grandfather's radical mood swings, which were then called, get this, fits of whimsy. That's true, that was a diagnosis at that time. I read it myself. That also may loom on my horizon if my meds no longer help me out. Certainly I am grateful for all that I have, especially Linda, my blessed partner in life, and for what an astute psychiatrist helped me to uncover. You know, I still have much grandparents' delight to savor. I still have many holy days to celebrate. I have many festive dinners to cook and serve. I have a doppelganger, Rabbi Wilson, Rabbi Ribeye, who travels with me wherever I go, and I calculated back that I got that name during a boring period in a class that we were having 48 years ago, and it's stuck ever since. I have acts of kindness waiting for me to perform. I realize that 4 years after which I will have arrived at my father's time of decline may not be long enough. But I accept it as a challenge, not as a cause for despair. I was mortally ill a year and a half ago, hospitalized in Atlanta for 5 weeks, treated by wonderful physicians, and one day an itinerant doctor, hospitalist, walks in, pulls my chart out, flips through it. I said, "Well, Doc, what's the prognosis?" He went, "Well, you know, everything will be all right because you're not going to live until you're 70. Then I asked Facebook how long I'd live, and they said 88. Now, who wants a pair of hideous puppies? I have a shoebox full of them, and only one French coffee.